right, it's 6 p.m. Let me see who's here. So I have Counselor Gwynn, I have Counselor Gilmore, I have Counselor Dolan, there you are. I see Counselor Disorder, and I have Vice President Wheeler. So I think we're good to go, and I have Tammy. All right, welcome back to committee chairs. Today is Tuesday, August 4th, and the time is 6 p.m. I shared the agenda link in the chat. If anyone else needs it, let me know. This meeting is being recorded by the chairs committee. If any other people are doing the same, please notify me at this time. Seeing none. Okay. Roll call, Tammy, please.
President Stemple?
Present.
Vice President Wheeler?
Here.
Counselor Disorder?
Here.
Counselor Gwynn?
Present.
Counselor Gilmore?
Here.
Counselor Dolan?
Here.
Madam President, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Tammy. We'll start at the top, the president's notes. So let's see, it's August and we've been doing this virtual thing for a little while. I think we've gotten pretty good at it, but obviously it's ideal to be in person. So our first item on our agenda is starting the conversation about policies or procedures to safely resume in-person council and subcommittee meetings. Is there, as far as I know, this is just here to start talking about it. First, I kind of want to open it up to see what the sense is. What corporations and companies are doing around the country is kind of getting a pulse of staff members to see how comfortable they feel doing that. So while we're not a company or anything like that, and we're certainly not staff members of any kind, I want to get a pulse of this group to see, A, are you comfortable resuming in-person meetings anytime soon? What apprehensions do you have? And yeah, so if anybody has feedback or suggestions or concerns, I'm going to open the floor at this time.
President Stemple, I'll just
Yep.
by saying I brought this up in passing early on about having the full council meeting in some way where we would have social distancing and possibly have a screen with public comment. And I only floated the idea, and during appointments and ordinances, I did hear from a couple of the members there that have no interest in getting back together whatsoever at this point in time. So
I was gonna say never. They've no.
So it, and I don't want to say, I don't want to do a roll call and tell people, but I would say almost half of that committee felt they weren't ready to get back together and take the risk. So I was not suggesting it for committee. I was suggesting that we do it for full council more than committee, but it didn't go over very well. So that's the only update I wanted to give you.
Great, thank you for that. Councillor Dolan. You may be muted.
Is this, can you hear me?
I can hear you. It's
okay,
I just think of all of the progressive commercials every time.
Yeah. So I think it would be logistically complicated enough just to get the 13 of us together. And that I could potentially feel comfortable with. It's the public, the public portion and gathering the public together for any kind of any purpose that I'm really uncomfortable with. And frankly, without having the public there, without having that face-to-face interaction with them, I don't know what the utility of having a face-to-face meeting if our public comment is still going to be on the screen. So it's not something I'm in favor of at the moment.
Thank you. Counselor DeZorger.
Hi. It isn't something that I am in favor of at this point either. The numbers are increasing, and I'm a greeter at the town hall now, and I can see that people have difficulty with, some people have difficulty with their masks. Some people have difficulty understanding the 6 foot, keeping 6 feet apart. I also think of the 13 of us, there are people with underlying conditions, and I have listened in on the school committee. They are staying, their initial plan is to begin virtually, and I think that we would be jumping the gun at this point.
Thank you. Counselor Gilmore.
I don't know if I have anything really unique to add after hearing from my fellow counselors, but I don't feel like I felt a little more amenable to this last month, but now I feel like we're seeing these numbers starting to go up again. And I mean, I've tried doing outdoor dining and I've tried some of these things, and I really am not how everybody is behaving in public right now. So I would just assume continue meeting virtually. And going back to what you're saying about employers, I mean, my boss has already told me I'm not going back to work until January at the earliest. Period. So I think that's something we need to take into account too.
City Council, I'm not sure who that is. Is that you, Danny? Or is that you, Tammy?
I think for some reason that's me because I'm the host. I'm the host.
I'm City of Greenfield.
I see. Oh, City Council, I don't know. My brain
different.
hasn't turned back on yet.
So
Danny's like, let me be clear what side I'm on.
So I agree with what everybody's saying. I mean, I think it's, our responsibility to model best behavior. And if caseloads are going up potentially, then it's probably not the time. And I do think that if we do go back to meeting in person, that it would probably need to be a hybrid model where we continue to meet through Zoom just to accommodate anyone who's immunocompromised and doesn't feel comfortable. And so I did talk to GCTV about that, about like if we went to a hybrid, if they'd be able to cover it. And they said, well, it's really hard. It's something all the stations and probably different councils are thinking about, because at some point that might be the way to come to transition out of Zoom. But he said it's really hard. And so I think it'd be great to allow the people from the public who don't have access to computers a way to speak at public comment, but I think it's probably too hard to do right now. So that's my take.
Great. And I also want to invite Director Letourneau or Chief of Staff. I always say Director Letourneau. It's so much easier to say than Chief of Staff. But I also want to invite your opinion too.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know, so for at least one of the boards and commissions, the mayoral boards and commissions, the licensing commission, we've done a few in-person hybrid meetings, and at the request of the board themselves, they really wanted to come in so they can sign stuff for Lori, all that. And I have to say it's extremely difficult because we have to do the hybrid. So, those are pretty short meetings sometimes, and the technology required to get the participants and allow the public to be able to come in, but you have the board in person, it's a lot more complicated. So I would say that when you guys are ready, I think the city council would be a good one to kind of make sure we work with either GCTV or our tech department or both to get something set up ahead of time and not do a laptop on the table the way we're doing with licensing. It's really not my favorite thing to do. It's not great. I'd rather us be fully remote at this point, but that's just my 2 cents. So we've been doing that. It's not easy.
Thank you. So the consensus I'm hearing here is that no one's ready yet. And I think that makes sense with the numbers that we're seeing. We're in phase 3 yet things are surging. So what I'm going to suggest we do is not table this, because obviously it's just under president's notes, but let's keep it under president's notes. So we'll go month by month to just see how we are feeling, how the environment is doing, and continuing to have this conversation at this meeting. And then we can go from there. It sounds like right now it's a no game, and that's fine. I want to make sure that everyone's comfortable, and sometimes people don't feel comfortable saying they're not comfortable. So I'd hate to force anyone into a situation where their voice isn't heard and they're afraid to be different. So we'll just keep this under president's notes for now and revisit it in September. Does that sound good? I can see heads nodding. Perfect. All right. So moving on to precinct map on council website. I don't have background on this. So if there's someone on the call who has background, please, by all means, jump in.
President Semple, may I speak?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm on a Kindle, so I don't have a keyboard or anything. I kind of have to speak
No,
up.
you're fine. You're the glue that keeps us together.
Thank you. This came up, Councilor DeSorger introduced it to us. Apparently, there has been a lot of issues from citizens not knowing what their precinct is, and unfortunately, our website isn't very friendly with that issue. So she made the suggestion of having the precinct map on the councilor's website side. The problem with the precinct map on the website is that it's not very complete. As you know, streets in Greenfield can run through 2, even 3 precincts. So even though someone lives on High Street, they could have a different counselor from the person who's living 5 doors down. And the precinct map on the website does not reflect house numbers. So Clerk Scott and I were talking, and what we may do is we may put a link on the counselor's part of the website that people can go on the state website and look up their precinct that way, because apparently our precincts are listed on the state website. So she and I are going to talk more about it tomorrow, but that's what we're thinking, and then maybe it would be easier for people to find out their precinct that way.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I just tried to do like a quick website search of the precinct map on the site, and it didn't come up when I Googled it on Google. Something came up, and yeah, it's not very user friendly at all.
No, it's not. And even if we did, like I said before, even if we did have it on the website, because it's vague and it's not very detailed, you wouldn't be able to use it anyway. So that's why Clerk Scott and I are working on maybe putting the link up there for the state for people to.
The elections and voting website?
No, the council's part of the website for the city.
Yeah, but it would be the elections and voting website from the SEC.
Yes. If that's the web, she told me it was the state website, so we would have to find that. We would have to find that place and then be able to put that link on our website so people can go directly to the place where they need to be.
Oh gosh, I'm like trying this out to see how simple it is now. I just think maybe my brain these past few months. Oh yeah, that's very simple. I think that's a nice, easy solution. And I can actually, I'm here now, so I can just send you the link after the meeting. Cool. I like that solution. It's a quick fix for now. I'd like to welcome Councilor Disorder to provide feedback. Does that sound good to you, Councilor Disorder?
That's fine. I just wanted to say that that was brought forward by a constituent who couldn't find the precinct map. And I thought, no, of course you couldn't, because when I was running for council, I couldn't find it anywhere on the town site. I found it through a Google search. And it just was hard to find. So I think it's a good idea, whatever it is, that we can make it easier for people to know. They want to know what precinct they're in, and they want to know who their counselor is.
Yep.
And as an aside, I'm throwing this in, and it's as an aside, it would be good for you to all look at the precincts, and then we can look at the census map and see how everyone is doing in their precinct on the census. I hope people have had a chance to see that too. You can kind of line up those two maps, because the most dense precincts in the I think 3, 7, 4, 8 are having, the very poor response on the census. So maybe everybody can take a look at that too. That was an advertisement.
If you're able to also, Ginny, Councilor Disorder, if you're able to provide the census, the link to the census results map, emailing it out to either Tammy so it can be sent out to counselors with that ask, I think that would be phenomenal and very helpful, so folks don't have to search for it on their own.
Very good. I'll do that.
I find that teeing people up with the resources a click away creates more action.
I just actually sent the 2 pictures to Kathy about 10 minutes ago, because I thought, oh, we need to know this. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, next item is the complete agenda packets posted to the website. So we've seen some back and forth on this. I know, Tammy, I was pretty certain that you had come to a solution, but if you wanted to update us and confirm whether or not we came to a solution, that'd be helpful.
Yes. Well, just to give some background, it turns out that in the beginning there was the agenda that was being put on the website. However, it was just the agenda itself and not the complete packet. It was my understanding, speaking to Clerk Scott, that she was led to believe that we couldn't put complete packets on the website because it used up a lot of space. So what we did is we did a little experimentation, we did a little finagling, if you will, and what we ended up doing is we're putting the agenda on the website the same way we put the council minutes on the website. There's a section where we list the council minutes, we download the council minutes, and people are able to review them. So what we did is there was maybe 12 plus years of minutes on the website. So we took a lot of them down. We only have 5 years up there. And what I did is I downloaded the agenda packet for the committee chairs, and I was able to get a link, and having Clerk Scott help me, it turns out that we were able to put the full packet on the website. So if you notice on the committee chairs, there is on the top where it says to join the meeting via computer and to join via phone, it says to view full agenda, and there's a link. And if you click on the link, you'll be able to see the full agenda. What we decided is once that meeting is over, that agenda will be taken down. So it'll clear stuff up, and then we can put the new agenda on. But so far, and this is the first one we've done, but so far it's been working very well. So we're hoping that it will continue to be successful and people are able to view the whole agenda, and that way they are informed as well and can follow along with the council.
Let me ask you, thank you for doing that. It sounds like you both put a lot of legwork into figuring out a process that works. Let me ask, are we required to host the agenda that's shared on the Greenfield-mass.gov site, or would we be able to host on the Greenfield the council Google Drive and share that way? Because if storage is the issue, getting around it using our Google Drive might be helpful. I just don't know what the regulations are around that.
From what I understand, there's no law, there's nothing in the charter, there's nothing anywhere saying that we are required to put anything on the website, the minutes, the agenda, or anything of that nature. That we are doing as a courtesy to bring information to the citizens. As far as the shared drive, there's only a limited amount of people who have access to that shared drive. Whether we're allowed to open it up so that everyone has access, that I don't know. We would have to check with
I see.
We would have to check with IT on that. But
yeah, I see that now when I go to share.
Yeah.
It's restricted, only people added. I see. Okay. Because I was just trying to brainstorm different processes or different options.
Yeah. Well,
or to COS Laterno's suggestion, creating a public Google folder. And maybe have you connected with Fernando? Tammy?
No, I haven't. I haven't spoken to him yet about that.
The only reason I'm poking and prodding here is I just don't want this to become such a process for you both where you have to put it up and take it down. And if you're able to just find a link similar to the link that you're sharing to us, or we just change it where the link that you're sharing to us is a public Google folder, or some process that's easier for you both. That's my intention.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, it's not difficult. I put the minutes up there every month. I put the vote summary up there, so it's really not a problem for me. And that way, it's all there in one place. The agenda, minutes, everything is on the council website, so it's all in one place.
Right. What I'm suggesting is perhaps not that they're in different places, but they're all on the same place where you would normally store it. But instead of you having to upload it as its own document living within the website, all you need to do is copy and paste a link.
Right.
So it would cut down some steps for you. And it would reduce the storage need.
Yeah.
And so we can definitely table that for now, put it in the parking lot. And then if you wanted to reach out to Fernando and confirm or deny if that's a possibility, that might be helpful. And if not, by all means, keep doing it the way that you're doing. I want to make sure it's easy for you guys.
Yep. No, it's good. So, but I will talk to Clerk Scott now, and we'll reach out to Fernando and see what we can do, if anything.
Yeah, I know how much is on all of your plates, and this is just one more thing, and so the easier for you all, the better. But by all means, do it the way you want to.
Okay.
Thank you, Tammy. Next, we have the executive session for the purpose of discussing strategy with respect to pending litigation. I am going to call on maybe Chief of Staff Laterno or Vice President Wheeler to provide some background there, and whoever wants to raise their hand, by all means. Oh, Councilor DeZorga, I'm sorry, I missed your comment regarding the website. So we'll pause, we'll go to her comment, and then I'll continue. I want to make sure I'm capturing everybody here.
I just was thinking, like, we couldn't put on the contract. We couldn't put the entire packet on because there are things like a contract that you couldn't post. Isn't that correct? The terms of the contract.
Is that a question to me or a question to
I guess
Tammy?
it was a comment, but partially a question. I thought we are reviewing a contract currently, and I wouldn't have thought that was something that you might post publicly, but maybe I'm incorrect. So it's part question.
That is something I'm not familiar with as to if we're legally supposed to not post that publicly or not. But I can
That's
either
a public record.
It's
Yeah.
public record. And even if it wasn't on the website, people can ask for a physical copy of the agenda and they would get the same thing. So yeah,
Right.
it's public record.
Does that answer your question, Councilor DeZorga?
Yes, thank you very much.
Of course. All right, sorry about that. So in terms of this item on the agenda, it sounds like, well, we put it on the president's notes just so we could make sure it goes in the right place when we're building the agenda. But if anyone has questions about this, typically, to Kathy's point, we're never with enough time, like ahead, to put executive sessions on the chair's agenda. So that's why it's not usually here. But because we do kind of curate our full council agenda during this time, I requested, and I think Vice President Wheeler requested, that it just comes on the president's notes. So when the agenda is built, we can put it in a place that makes sense. But if anyone has any questions, please let me know. I'm going to kick it to Chief of Staff Letourneau.
So we're talking about the executive session to review pending litigation for the city. Councilor Wheeler will have a little more info because this has been requested. Actually, I think the mayor requested that we do this. The mayor and finance director Gilman want to update the council on ongoing litigation and the costs of those. And that needs to be done in executive session because it's litigation. We can't talk about it. This is not public record. So that just kind of as a FYI heads up, and the financial impacts of those. These are all, luckily, I guess, old litigation. So this is all hanging over. Things that the city has to deal with and that could cost money. That's why this would be requested coming up, as opposed to surprise when giant bills come if we have to move money around.
Yeah. That's sufficient for me, but if you have anything to add, Vice President Wheeler, by all means.
Yeah, just pretty much what Danny said. None of the new counselors have been briefed on ongoing litigation. There was a settlement, and I think, especially in terms of ways and means for us to make recommendations, during budget season, we need to have a sense of the costs and where they're coming from. And I think it's great that that we're talking about it at committee chairs and getting it on the agenda, because sometimes when it appears at the last minute, counselors don't know why it's there and it can be frustrating. But I think if we know to plan to have time, I think it's a great thing to talk about.
I agree. Planning is the key to success, said the Virgo. Yeah, that sounds good. Do counselors have any questions? Seeing none, we will move on to request for counselors' videos to be turned on during entire WebEx meetings. I know that this was a public concern during our August meeting. I just want to open up this item by stating sometimes it's a bandwidth issue. I know during full council meetings, a lot of the times I have to turn my video off in order to not be kicked out of the meeting. So it's twofold of, I understand it's a respect thing, but sometimes you have to do that in order to keep the show moving. But happy to hear from other folks. Councillor Gwynn.
There we go. I had heard from a constituent about this. My only comment would be if we are going to require us to have our cameras on, which I think is a positive thing, I think we should recommend to the people that are speaking to us to turn their cameras off once they have done the public opinion or public comment. Last meeting, and specifically in August, more than any meeting I noticed, or July prior to any.
I said August, sorry.
Yeah, you got me going. I believed you. I believed you. In July, more than ever, there were people that kept their camera on themselves, even though they were there for public comment, our entire meeting. And if we're worried about bandwidth, I think we have to both, by all means, invite people to have their camera on when they're speaking and we're asking them questions or what have you. But I think at the same time, if we're going to save the bandwidth for us, we have to make some policy that says, please turn your camera on when you're speaking and off when you finish, because we had a lot of cameras on last meeting that were just kind of watching and nonverbal communications through the camera. And I think we got to look at both sides. That's it.
That's a good point. Thank you, Councillor Gwynn. Councillor Disorder.
Two comments. So I was on the school committee meeting the other night. There were 990 people on that, and I needed to get off so that the school committee members could sign in and out. So bandwidth can be an issue. I think that was a very good comment that Councillor Gwynn had. I think that we could all try to keep them on and maybe make an announcement at the beginning that occasionally a councillor may need to shut their camera off for a few minutes, especially when it's a 4-hour meeting. If you have a long meeting, you may need to shut the camera off for a minute. So maybe a public announcement at the beginning that will be done, but occasionally somebody might need to shut it off for a couple of minutes for something, like a trip to the bathroom.
Those darn bladders. That's a good point, Jenny. And I think being open and transparent at the front half, like even to Councillor Gwynn's point of just when I share the rules or Vice President Wheeler shares the rules for public comment, just asking folks, you're welcome to come on camera when you share your comment. It's encouraged, but due to bandwidth, please come off camera once you're done speaking. I think that's fair. And I also think just putting it out there that counselors may need to step away. But I also request when you step away just to let us know. So if we're in the middle of a vote, we're not trying to get to you if you're not there. Or if you need to shut your camera off because everything's going too slow, just to let us know. Communication is the key to success. Councillor Vice President Wheeler.
Thanks. Yeah, I was the one who someone brought this concern to me, and so I just wanted to clarify that it was a request for counselors to have their cameras on during public comment, because this constituent found it alienating to be speaking to 12, blank icons, basically. And I agree with the bandwidth concern as much as anyone. I'm downstairs because the bandwidth upstairs in my house isn't good enough for these WebEx meetings. So I totally hear that, but I just wanted everybody to know that was a concern that was brought to us, and I'm going to be aware of it, and I may try harder to have my camera on to listen during public comment and then turn it off for the rest of the meeting, except for when I'm speaking. That's what I'm going to try to do.
I appreciate that. And it's a good check for everybody just in this virtual environment we're in, having the personal connection of looking at someone's face, especially when we're talking about challenging topics, is really important. So kudos to that resident who brought it up. Councillor Gilmore.
So kind of on the other side of that, I recognize that all of us ran for office and we have all put ourselves out in the public, but I live with people who did not run for office and do not necessarily want to be on camera if they're, I mean, if I have one of my kids coming over to try and whisper a question to me about dinner while I'm sitting, I try to set those boundaries, but I'm in my house, and my family didn't necessarily decide that they wanted to be, out in the public. So, I also, when I try to put my camera on, you can ask Kathy about this during CRE, I keep getting kicked out. She had to stop a meeting because I was chairing and I got kicked out because I tried to have my camera on. So, I mean, there are some other things too. I mean, part of it is, privacy. I'm public, I'm an open book, but I'm also trying to protect, I've got kids here too, so.
Thank you. And I think that just roots back to the comment previously that Councillor Disorder made, where it's just saying, you know what, I'm going to be without my camera today, and this is why. And so I think that should be sufficient. Councillor Dolan.
Yeah, I wanted to just kind of, I think I'm mostly echoing what Councillor Gilmore.
And you froze up.
Speaking of bandwidth.
We as counselors can respond to that as we see fit, having heard it. I would caution against trying to micromanage these kinds of things in a Zoom setting, because in addition to kind of the cumulative bandwidth of everybody having video on at the same time, also each individual could be having bandwidth issues. And I also don't want to minimize at all the concerns that Councillor Gilmore had. And we're not all in control of our environments, and sometimes it just makes sense to be off video. So yeah, I think we can just hear the feedback and all act appropriately as we see fit.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's trying to micromanage a process. I think it's just awareness that, there is a connection challenge in a virtual environment. Folks usually come to meetings to speak before us, and when they speak before us in a virtual environment and they're speaking to our initials, I think they fear that it doesn't have the same impact, or they don't know if we're there actively. We could be in the next room. And so I hear their concerns, but I don't think there's any micromanaging happening here. I just think it's a call to be more communicative if there's a reason why you don't need to be, or you don't want to be, or can't be on camera. I think that's all. Councillor Disorder.
Can I follow up on that actually?
Sure.
Are you suggesting that we do that in the chat or interrupt the meeting?
However you see appropriate, because I know some people pop in and out of camera. And so I know for myself, if I shut my camera off, it means I need to step away to grab water. And so I know that I will obviously, as chair of the meeting, make sure that I'm either appointing somebody or letting people know I'm stepping away. But it's really helpful to Kathy too during roll call votes and everything else, just knowing that if you're stepping away, we don't know if you're behind your camera or not, if it's shut off. And so I just think it behooves us to be as communicative as possible, whatever that choice is to you. And if you want to communicate to me why you're not having it, and then if people bring it up, then I can know and say it. But I think being open and transparent is always a good way to go. By all means, not suggesting that people have to be on camera, whether it's bandwidth or personal. I hear you loud and clear, but I do think that there's an element of speaking before counselors' faces that the public craves and deserves. And if we can't deliver that for them, then being open and honest about why is helpful. No judgment. Counselor Disorder.
So I just thought while Councilor Gilmore was speaking, how true what she had to say was. Listening to school committee meetings and people's entire families, almost everybody on school committee has little children, so I can certainly understand that. I think there's two sides to that, and your family did not choose to all be doing that. And yet the last meeting in July, when there were so many people who were so passionate, I was hoping that more cameras would be on. So I think we'll all be cognizant of that and just let people know. And when your children are there, they didn't have a right. They have a right to their privacy. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. Agree wholeheartedly. So this was a good discussion. To summarize, feel free to do what's right for you. I by no means am trying to suggest that everyone has to be and is required to be on camera. I am just reminding everybody that there's power when someone comes to speak before the council and they get to look at our faces. And I know that provides them with a sense of the impact that they're taking the time out of their day to create. So consider it. If it doesn't work for you, that's fine. No judgment. If anything, it really helps us embrace this work-life imbalance that we have. And I think it helps us role model doing what's right for us and letting folks know that we're doing what's right for us and our families at this time. So by all means, do what feels right to you. Consider coming on camera. And then if what's right for you isn't being on camera, if there's an opportunity or a need to perhaps share why you're not on camera, by all means, please do so. Next, we have a mayor's reappointment. That's pretty self-explanatory. We have a warrant for the September 1st, 2020 primary election. That's pretty self-explanatory. And then we have a lease extension for the Office of Veteran Services. We can discuss that now. All right, first I want to pause. Does anyone have discussion about the reappointment or the warrant before we move on to the last bullet under President's notes?
The reappointment will come to A&O, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure everything's shuffled into agendas already. Let me see. Let me just confirm that. Appointments ordinances. Yeah, so that's already under on the agenda item. So we can once we go meeting by meeting, we can ensure that that's there. But I just saw it there, so I think we're good. The warrant will not go on a subcommittee meeting. That will go right to council.
So that is the chair's report. And I'd like to now move into the items for the evening.
I don't know if that's somebody speaking to me, and if they're not, can you please go on mute? Thank you very much. All right, and so last we have the lease extension for the Office of Veteran Services. That would likely go to Ways and Means, which I believe it's there. No, it's not there. What is this? So we'll make sure. Do you agree, Vice President Wheeler, that would go under Ways and Means?
Yes, I do.
All right, so we'll just make sure that that's there. I know that we're seeing a little bit of back and forth from constituents on this. Curious if Chief of Staff Turno has any background on this lease extension.
I do. So I can write this all up for Ways and Means as well, and I have some notes about the background. So currently we rent the space on Main Street for the Veteran Services, Upper Pioneer Valley Veteran Services, and it's our individual Greenfield Veteran Services office. They see between 5 and 10 individuals a day in there. Currently the lease, and then they also do outreach out into senior centers around the county. The lease is fixed right now, and it's at the same amount without an increase through 2022. In the current lease, which was signed in 2017, the city was actually responsible for all maintenance and for HVAC repairs, updates, and replacement of anything inside the interior, basically. I did attach the full lease for the council. The landlord was responsible for structure and exterior, kind of roughly speaking. With the lease extension, we are getting the landlord to agree to pay up to $5,000 towards a replacement of an HVAC system, which actually did fail this summer, so that'd be air conditioning. And he's willing to do that if we extend the lease, and he is willing to do that now, even though the extension wouldn't actually kick in until 2022. So we put this forward to the council. It does require the 30-day review. Although it is a percentage increase each month, we did negotiate a bit about this. It still arrives well under the market rate, even at the end of the 5 years. So the total 5-year increase starting in 2022, so the rent won't go up until 2022, but then it'll go up small amounts each year. At the end of those 5 years in 2027, we're actually still paying less than the current market rate in Greenfield and for some of our peer communities are now. And also the amount of the increase is far below the $5,000 the landlord will pay for the HVAC. So it seems like a pretty good deal. It's really important. It's a really good space. I think when they put out the RFP to move the veterans to that space, one of the things they were looking for was accessibility, centrally located and accessible to public transportation. And all of those things are true on Main Street. And then just keeping in mind that the other half of that HVAC bill will actually be able to be paid for by a donation account that the veterans maintains. So this won't be coming out of capital or any other unforeseen area. So that's exactly what that account is for, is to pay for things that come up that are, above and beyond what we're budgeted for. I, can answer some individual questions. We did get a couple emails, and those can help inform my, information for you guys at Ways and Means. It's a little tricky because we want to get the repairs done, but, we have to go through this process to extend a lease this long. And that's fine. Be with the landlord on that.
Thank you.
If anybody has questions,
I don't see any questions, and I think it's okay to reserve those questions for Ways and Means versus handling this as an item here. I appreciate the background though, so we know what the background is, and we are just seeing those questions come through from residents. So this was very helpful. But yeah, I'll move forward and just.
Excuse me, President Sample?
Yes, Tammy?
I'm sorry. Just to let you know, because this falls under the 30-day contract review, it won't be dealt with Ways and Means until next month. So it'll be on their September agenda. That's why it's not on this.
That's helpful.
Can I have a question for Chief Letourneau. Is this is time of the essence in any way or anything? Because that rule it gives us the right. It doesn't actually mean that we have to take longer. So just for my information.
Yeah. I'm glad you asked that question. I also read that same bit of info. And I think that if it were done, I don't want to push it through if people have questions, but if it were done in 1 month, it would be immensely helpful to get this resolved. So I'm already gathering, kind of my anticipated questions plus some of the citizens' questions. So if I could get kind of a memo together for you folks to look at, if you could agree to do it faster than September, it would be really helpful to the veteran services to get that stuff fixed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see that Ways and Means is light for once. And so if that's agreeable to you, Vice President Wheeler, we will hear that this month.
Yeah, that works for me. Yeah. That sounds good.
Great. All right, so moving to committee agendas, so Ways and Means. So the meeting has been moved to Tuesday, the 18th, which that's going to be consistent for the rest of the year, Tuesdays?
Yeah, it's going to be Tuesdays, except for, I think there's one or maybe two that might conflict with another meeting, but other than that, it's going to be Tuesdays. I think we actually agreed on 5:30 as the time. So we don't have to, and maybe Councilor DeSorger can jump in here about whether or not corroborate what I'm saying, but I think we'd like to have them at 5:30. This one, if it's already posted for 6, I think that's fine. But Tammy, I think we do want to meet at 5:30 was the time we agreed.
I see a 5:30 for A&O. Is that the usual time for A&O? I thought that was 6.
We had discussed 5:30, and
Okay.
I believe that that was the sense of the majority.
Okay, I wasn't sure if I wanted to make sure that times weren't, but.
And I can change Ways and Means to 5:30. That's not a problem.
Okay. Yeah, let's do 5:30 because I think that was what was agreed upon when we discussed it. Thank you.
Great. So we'll have the repurposing of the Maplebrook culvert, and then the discussion on current status of reevaluations of commercial and residential properties.
So that's actually, sorry to jump in and interrupt.
Oh, you're fine.
The assessor stuff with the reval discussion, we're going to try to do that in September because too many people are away and on vacations. So we're going to strike that from the August agenda.
All right, so it sounds like, and Tammy, just jump in when and if you have questions. So it sounds like for August, we'll have the Maplebrook culvert and the Veterans Office, and then in September, so maybe we move the discussion item to President's Notes for next month, Tammy, and then we can.
I'm sorry. So move the discussion of the current status reval to September.
Yes, yeah.
And the lease for the veterans offices, you want on this month's Ways and Means agenda?
Yes.
Okay.
So those two items, the veterans lease and the Maplebrook culvert to I&I, and then we're moving the discussion to September, it sounds like.
Okay.
At 5:30 in August. Any other items, Vice President Wheeler?
No, I think that's it for Ways and Means. It's light for once.
Perfect. So moving on to A&O, their meeting is confirmed for 5:30 on the 12th. I hear a question or a comment. Chief Letourneau?
Sorry, I just want to make sure I know, when is the Ways and Means meeting again? There was some back and forth about this.
Tuesday, the 18th at 5:30 p.m.
I want to make sure. Thank you.
Of course. So for A&O, Councilor Gwynn, you have a reappointment.
Yep, that's fine.
You have the ordinance regarding electioneering.
Not needed in August. We can move that to September.
And is that because we're not concerned about the primary, we're more concerned about presidential?
Yeah, it's more to do with local than anything else, based on history. We had Kathy speak at the last meeting, and we can probably put that in for the final. I want to get some information from Kathy, but we'll probably put it on the September agenda, and it will be in the September full council.
Great. All right, so we will move that first ordinance discussion to September. And then next we have the ordinance to prohibit the use of non-emergency unmuffled compression release engine brakes.
Yeah, that's table. Councilor Wheeler and I had a discussion about this, and at this point, with other things happening, we're not going to address that at this point, and we'll consider removing it or changing it in the future.
Okay, great.
Okay.
And then you have an ordinance to establish rental dwelling units update.
Yeah, well, let me talk about that for a moment. This is our first, last meeting, Councilor Wheeler spoke on his intention. This meeting will be the first time the committee is looking at this, and we're kind of got the cart before the horse here. A lot of people are saying they want to speak at this meeting and it's going to council. It's not ready for any of that. What we're doing is just making sure we understand the nature and the intention. So my request would be for this meeting for A&O, would you have Board of Health present to speak on the nature and implementation? Because I've had some good discussion with Councilor Wheeler on this point, and then I've been hearing from various people that want to speak to us, both landlords associations and entities. And I think this is going to be something that will happen. I just think it needs a little more work and make sure we're going in the right direction. And Councilor Wheeler felt the same way as the councilor that put it forward. So it is a work in progress. This is not ready to come up to full council. This is something that's going to take some elements to make sure that we're the nature of why this was put forward ends up being a positive to the reasoning without causing any kind of effect to the people that are already there. So it's got some work to be done on it.
All right, so what I hear is that this is more of like a working session, more so than
Correct.
anything else.
And sorry.
I did see two folks come through from either landlords or landlords association who wanted to speak at this meeting. And so I agree having the Board of Health speak first. However, there is a component of feedback from invested parties that is useful to the planning of whatever that final presented before council ordinance is. So, but if it's your sense that you would prefer just to have for round one just the Board of Health, then so be it.
That is my sense. I would like to hear from the people, the Landlords Association. We've heard from not only the association, we received a letter from Mark Zacchio. We also heard from another constituent, Greening. Was it Otis? Excuse me. Was it Greening of Greenfield? Was that where they were?
One from Greening of Greenfield.
Yeah, and I want to hear all of those elements, but I know appointments and ordinances. First thing was to make sure we knew the nature of this and the intention without starting to refine it. And the first step would be to see why the Board of Health thought it was a tool that would be helpful to Greenfield. And then I have to bring in we're going to have to talk to the town, the city within itself to make sure that all pieces of this are doable. If we put together a structure that can't be enforced, we're just causing, a minutia that's going to be harder to navigate through. So those are the elements. Right now, I'd like to hear from Board of Health, and then next meeting from the outside sources that are going to be great information as we try to put this together and work with Councilor Wheeler on drafting it in a form that comes out of these meetings.
Great. I see Vice President Wheeler would like to speak. Go right ahead.
I just wanted to ask you, Councilor Gwynn, if you wanted to have Tammy send out the official invitation to Director Byrd.
Yes, most definitely.
Okay.
Thank you, Tammy. And Councilor Gwynn, are you comfortable responding to the folks who have reached out to speak?
Yes.
And just letting them know your preferred structure and letting them know that, of course, we will want to hear from you, but this is how we're structuring this first.
Yeah, I will stop by city council office and make sure that I'm following through with Tammy and everyone on the people that requested, that I haven't missed anyone, and we'll get that communication from A&O out to people, that yes, people will be heard. We're just in the planning process to make sure we're doing this right.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. Councillor DeZorger.
So it sounds like Councillor Gwynn was going to reach out to and he's going to let the landlords know that that's not going to come up. I've had another landlord that was in contact with me. I just had a concern because we had several citizens who spoke on this at our last meeting, and actually I saw the ordinance for the first time from a constituent that wrote, so I didn't want the landlords to feel that they weren't getting their due time. So I don't know if that could even be in the paper or something, that we're not taking that up this time, so that will be for next month.
Or future months, it sounds like.
Yes.
And I think it's okay. I know that it's our goal to be transparent and open, but I think it's okay too, because at the subcommittee level, there is no public comment and it is a working session time. There is no expectation that the public should speak unless they're asked to come and speak before the subcommittee. So I think that that's fine, but to your point, just making sure that those folks who have reached out to us, letting them know what the desired cadence is by the chair of the committee would be helpful. And I think it creates a sense of process and procedure versus chaos. So I appreciate Councillor Gwynn's insight there. Councillor Gwynn.
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate what you said. So yeah, I just want to make sure we have structure. What's starting to happen, and Councillor DeSorger just mentioned it, is people see something, that Councillor Wheeler was going to bring this forward, and they come to our full council meeting and they speak on it. And that's all fine, because it gives us some idea that people are interested and they're concerned. But it doesn't mean we have to act at that very next meeting. It means we're going to do this and make sure we come forward with something that's positive. So that's all I'm saying, is this will happen one way or the other, and it's going to take a work in progress, because that's what we're supposed to do at the committee level.
Thank you. Councillor DeZorger, does that answer your question or address your comment?
Yes, that's fine. I just thought we'd already had public comment on it at our last full council meeting from several people. So, and I thought, now we're going to let the landlords know that it's not on. So I guess it will all work out fine.
Yeah, I think sometimes folks, when you have public comment, you're available and open and are able to address anything you want at the full council level. So whether it's on the agenda or not, it might just be on their top of mind. They heard buzz that something was coming through the pipeline. But I completely agree with Councillor Gwynn, providing a process that will eventually allow folks to speak on it, but at a time that makes the most sense during the planning process. And then lastly, and so I just want to summarize before I move on. So it just sounds like it sounds like Tammy, you will invite Director Byrd to the Wednesday, August 12th A&O meeting. And then Councillor Gwynn, you will follow up with those who have requested to speak at this meeting, and just let them know that we just don't feel it's ready yet. We hear you, and there will be an opportunity for you to input.
That's correct.
Okay, great. Next we have, we have the 2020 ordinance review status update. Is that good for this month?
Unless I get in to see Danny at the mayor's office one of these days. We're kind of at a stalemate, and it's not because I've tried. I'll take this on. I have got to get into the mayor's office and find out where we are with implementing it to that level. So I could have an update, and I don't mind it showing up on the agenda because it could be a quick update that says I have nothing to add. So it can be on the agenda.
Okay. And I see Chief Letourneau has a question or a comment.
Yeah, Dan, Councilor Gwynn and President Stemple, I actually had this as a question in the back of my head for this meeting tonight. I don't think we actually hammered out a good process yet for department heads, and a few department heads have actually approached me recently. So if we want to get together a process, they are willing to submit their suggestions or information. We should come up with a process. So if Councilor Gwynn wants to give me a call this week, we can make a plan to meet up and hash it out.
That's exactly what I need. Thank you.
Yeah, me too. I do too. We do. We need it. Let's do it.
Great. Thank you both. Right, to summarize items on the A&O agenda, we have the mayor's reappointment. We have neither ordinance we will strike ordinance to prohibit electioneering. We will strike ordinance about unmuffled compression release engine brakes. But then we will keep the ordinance to establish rental dwelling units and inviting the Board of Health. And then we will keep the 2020 ordinance review. Whether or not there's an update, we will determine at said date.
That is correct. Thank you.
Next, we have economic development next week at 6 p.m.
So
go ahead.
My thought is to actually cancel the meeting for August. We kind of have been in a slow period. The 4 items that are on the chair's agenda, we're finished with the split tax. We haven't been able to convene the TIF committee about the TIF policies. The crosswalk in front of Greenfield's Market is obviously not relevant because they're moving and because there are major changes happening on Main Street in general. And then I think the boards and commissions survey is on hold until folks can meet face to face. So I was thinking we would not have a meeting this month.
Okay. Just to ask, because I'm curious, is there anything that prevents the boards and commissions updates from happening virtually?
I don't think necessarily anything, except it's harder to get anything done and it's harder to communicate in this world that we live in right now. And I think the committee has not had much of an appetite for it also.
Tell me more about an appetite for it.
They've just pretty consistently chosen to take up other things. And I think there's an irony here because there's a sense that we should be working on COVID-related things, but we don't have any COVID-related things necessarily to work on as in the Economic Development Committee. So there's been some movement to I'm not sure what to do with that.
Okay. Because I do think the committee is really important during this time. And I know that the mayor's office has a lot of economic sustainability efforts going in partnership with Director Adams. And so I feel as though it's a missed opportunity to be canceling this meeting during the height of when we're trying to sustain our downtown and our local businesses during COVID. And so I just encourage you as the chair to consider, maybe it is, to be honest, maybe it is COVID items that the council can be leaning in on. So I encourage you to kind of dig a little bit and see where we might be able to roll up our sleeves and provide some support, whether that's to what the mayor's office is already doing, or to items in legislation that we can, and ordinances that we can contribute to make it easier for our businesses. Councillor DeZoyer has a comment.
Councillor, to all of you, I have just recently come across a couple of things where I think we actually could do something better in economic development. There's something lost in the process here of the permitting process. Building permits are granted and business permits are not necessarily being applied for. And I just found 4 or 5 businesses that have been in existence for quite a long time, that one of them we gave a special permit to, and it never got on the books as having a business there. It was several years ago and has never been reassessed. That would be extraordinarily important for the economics of the town. So I was actually thinking of meeting with the mayor to talk with her about this process. Maybe we should be talking with each other. I don't know. So that is something that I have a grave concern about. If these properties had been assessed, if they had seen that they actually had a business there for the past 4 years, that, you know, it would have been thousands and thousands of dollars that the town would have reaped the benefits of. So I don't know if you want to take that up at a later time, but that was something that was on my radar screen.
Thank you. And that will be up to Councillor Dolan to take up or to follow up on. Yeah, so Council, of course, yes, please.
I think that would make perfect sense as an economic development issue. I think it makes sense to take it up after Ways and Means gets their update at the September meeting about the general commercial reassessments. I mean, that's something that I've been kind of waiting on actually as long as I've been on the council. I think it was my first or second meeting that we passed that. So that's certainly something that we could take up in the fall, but it's important to get that information from the assessor's office first.
Yeah, I agree with that cadence, Councillor Dolan. That makes sense. Okay, so so back to the canceling of the meeting. Thank you, Danny. Back to canceling the meeting. So you feel appropriate to cancel for August and then recoup back in September?
Yeah, I think at this point that makes the most sense, and maybe we can do it in the meantime to get some proposals on the table.
Yeah, it might even be helpful offline, sending out an email, almost like a survey to the committees saying, what do you think is helpful for economic development? Maybe just sourcing topics from your committee, because of course they have eyes and ears just as well as we all do into what's going on in Greenfield, and I'm pretty certain that there's agenda items that we could be really productive with there. So maybe that's what you spent. Maybe you spend August just retooling your approach and deciding where we can really lean in and contribute.
Yep.
Lastly, we have community relations and education, Monday the 17th at 6 p.m. You have a mask program, continued discussion, and the census. These have been on the agenda for a while. Hoping to get a sense of where you think they're going and if there's anything else that would be more useful for your committee's time.
Yeah, so I don't have a lot of an update. In July, we canceled our meeting. In June, we met, but we were only logged in for about 5 minutes because we didn't have anybody who was available to give us updates on any of these issues. For August, I'm happy to meet. I did have conversations with a few people about talking about police brutality as a community relations issue. And I know that we have a group of city officials and residents who are meeting trying to plan a forum. So I don't want to step on anyone's toes there, and I don't want to duplicate that sort of work. But I think that planning that forum might be a different topic than discussing ways that we can improve our own processes here and, from a city perspective.
Yeah.
So the mask program, I feel, is kind of old news. Census, I know, is my husband actually just got a job working with the census. So I know that they just started in the last couple of days. So I think it'd be interesting to get some updates and see, just like Councilor DeSorger was mentioning earlier, that there are certain precincts who have responded better than other precincts. So that could be useful. But again, it feels like a really sparse agenda, and it would be nice to take on some projects where my members could really, sink their teeth into and really do something good to help benefit the community.
Yeah, and I hear you. I'm guessing the mass program can be taken off. That's what I heard from your reaction there. The 2020 census is interesting because we have data that, to Councilor DeSorger's point, we have the data precinct by precinct to see which precincts aren't, perhaps, for lack of better terminology, performing as well as we would hope in terms of returning their census. So it might be interesting seeing that data, seeing which precincts are having some challenges, and enlisting those precinct counselors to that discussion and seeing if they have any ideas. Another idea, I'm glad you brought up the meeting. Whoever is not speaking and off mute, I can hear your TV. If you can mute yourself, that'd be helpful. Thank you. I think, so sorry, I got distracted by whatever that noise was, which will bring us to our clerk report. But I think, thank you for bringing up the planning of that community meeting. The issue I have with that meeting is I called for the council to have a discussion about police brutality, and just I called for that meeting to happen with the mayor's office and the public safety back in May. And now it's August and I haven't seen any movement from that now resident-led, community-led effort. We were told that leaders were not desired to be leading this effort. So myself, the mayor, I know Danny, and public safety, we were told to step back, so we did. But it's August and Greenfield still hasn't had any forum or any discussion of any kind. So I'm really disappointed about that. And so I think it does make sense at this point in time for the council to lead their own discussion, which obviously there's two things, right? So let's not be redundant in conversations, but at this point in time, there hasn't been one. So if we had one, it wouldn't be redundant to what they're planning, because I don't even know if they have a target date yet for what they're planning. And it's really concerning to me that we're moving into fall and nothing's been discussed, or there hasn't been an opportunity for us as a council to hear feedback as a body. And I think it's kind of stifling our ability to understand our environment and where residents have concerns. So that being said, I think that would be a good agenda item I hear that there's some other folks. 12. Forgive me, after Danny's question at 04, like 4 past the hour, Counselor Disorder, did you speak? Oh no, okay, I'm just trying to catch up. City Council. Vice President Wheeler, I don't think you spoke yet.
Yeah, could I actually go after Counselor Disorder and Chief of Staff Letourneau?
Yes.
Thank you.
Counselor Disorder.
What we're talking about right now is vital, but that was not what I was going to comment on. I was back. I'm going to comment now just because I have the
please do.
That was extremely important to me also. As far as CRE and the census, not that it's my place to be deciding where any of these go. I just wanted to say that it's incumbent upon all of us. The POTUS just moved the date up to the end of September. We were supposed to be the end of October. And I think we should just make an announcement to everyone to try to help their neighbors, to reach out to anybody that you can, because Western Mass is doing absolutely terrible. It's online. People are afraid to go knocking on doors. So even a public announcement at our meeting, I don't think it's something that CRE can solve. I think everybody needs to work or find somebody on the streets that they know who knows somebody, because you're not going to talk to somebody that you don't know about this, or people aren't going to welcome the door knockers right now. And we're at about 70%. And that's going to impact the funding that Greenfield has for the next 10 years. So I just wanted to alert everybody to that, and I will send out the picture. But the discussion that you were having is equally or more important than what I'm talking about. So onward.
No, that's very important. Thank you for flagging that. And it is interesting. I know that Boston also is lagging behind. And so I think it's just a national issue right now of shifting process during a pandemic. This sounds, I'm pretty sure I filled out my census via paper. I got it in the mail. So I think what I understood to be true is that there's multiple ways to complete this right now. It's not just online, although it is available online. And so if it is being mailed, which I'm 900% sure, because that's how I completed mine, and people are still not completing it, then we have a problem.
Follow up.
Yeah.
We all received something in the mail. It gave you your number, and your instructions were to fill it out online. Then there is a procedure that was going to be followed for people who did not do that. And the last procedure was the door knockers, people that threw out those envelopes, which I'm sure a lot of people did. It is people do not want to give information online. We've been being told for years that that's not a good idea. People aren't going to want to talk to people that they don't know who come to the door. And so I do think the first way was online. Oh.
Yeah. Thank you. I see comments here from Danny, and then I know that perhaps Vice President Wheeler's was about the forum. So I'm going to go down to Counselor Gwynn out of order because his comment is about the census, and then I'll move back up.
Thank you. Councilor Disorder said something that touched on the rest of my life. I have the ability to talk to lots of people at once. So what I would recommend is that we get our council officers, chairs, precinct that are low. If we use the map that Councilor Disorder just spoke on, let's get the councilors in that represent those precincts to do recorded messages, and I will play them on HAI Bear Country and the Outlaw. inviting people on a personal request. People go where they're invited. So if you say, this is Counselor, Counselor Wheeler, precinct this, or this is Counselor Gilmore from precinct 6, it means a lot to people. They feel like they're getting a friendly reminder, and it's not a national pitch. It's not. So I will throw that out to you. It will cost us absolutely nothing. We'll do it as a public service announcement, and we can make them very distinct on specific precincts, or Councilor President Stemple could come in and do some overall. I'll throw that out there. I think it could help, and it's going to help us as a community. So I'll just put that out there.
I really like that, taking the local approach. I'm on the census website right now just to confirm, like, the way that my life has been for the last few months. I don't know what's up or down. So I'm seeing here that they're making it as simple as possible for folks to complete. You can just run it online, by phone, or by mail, and they have some great language here about how it impacts their community. So I like that idea a lot. And I'm going to take comment on the census from Danny, and then I'm going to move back into the discussion previous to that.
Yeah, so just about the census, I like Councilor Gwynn's idea. I do think it's important to have this. We have Bill Stathis in the mayor's office has been keeping tabs on the census updates. He sort of checks in with the FERCog folks and has the census updates in the city hall. So the mayor's office would do, I'm volunteering the mayor to do a PSA for the census. Hopefully she's okay with that. I bet she will be. That's all I had to say on the census. My other comment was actually about the Forum on Race and Policing update.
Yeah.
So yeah, Councilor Stemple, you nailed it with some leaders emerged from the group of citizens, and they did ask the city leaders and the sort of establishment folks to step back, which I totally respect. I did help them by giving them a little bit of information on some funding sources, but I don't think that there's anything redundant in the city council or any other group of folks doing something like this. A lot of work has been done behind the scenes, so to speak, just because we don't have time to do it all. In these conversations we've been having with the police chief and other folks about, the world. So I think that if something came to community relations, perhaps there may be some things that the chief would want to update you guys on that they've been working on. They've been reviewing their use of force policy, things like that. I mean, as recently as today, there was another draft. So I think it'd be good to do that anytime. I think there's never enough conversations about this stuff. So
thank you for that. I agree. I'm going to move up to Vice President Wheeler, if I can find where that was. Yes. Is this now a good area for you to speak?
Sure.
I don't know what you're going to talk about, but I'm trying to place you.
I think I've lost my train of thought, but I just wanted to say first, thank you, Councilor Gwynn, for making that offer. I think that'd be a great idea to get those PSAs on the radio. And I just was going to say, since Chief Letourneau's on this call, that a lot of stuff that comes into EDC and CRE comes from the mayor's office. And so think of those subcommittees as a resource for some things that maybe need more discussion or not finding their answers. I don't know. MJ Adams obviously is always a good person to invite to that. But I think I support the idea of a police forum through CRE. It really sounded to me from my involvement in planning the forum that it needed to be separate things. There was going to be something organized by activists, and then the city could organize its own. And I don't think they need to compete with each other. I think they're mutually beneficial. So I support that in whatever way.
Thank you. Okay, so there's been comment. I want to pause and kick it back to Councilor Gilmore. Yeah.
Oh, you just read my mind.
I was like, wait, we're getting away from what we were doing.
No, I think this is perfect. We had a good conversation. So I'm thinking that if we talk about the census and maybe we can drum up some support to get some counselors to come and record some ads with Counselor Gwynn. I would love to do that. I think that'd be really neat. And I think that that's a good way to kind of reach out to people who sometimes recognize our names. And, you know, from hearing my husband's working just for a couple of days on this, and he has people slamming the door on his face because they just don't want big government in their houses, you know? So maybe hearing from like a neighbor or someone that they're familiar with might change their minds a little. So I think that that would be good. And then going on to the race relations issue and the police brutality issue, I really like the idea of having two tracks where we've got the citizen activist led track where they decide this is what they want out of their public officials, and then having a separate track where the public officials are saying, okay, what are we going to do to respond to our constituents? How are we going to meet their needs and still meet the needs of the city? So I would like to have a close relationship with those on the other side of the fence also, but I think that keeping these things separate means that they're holding us accountable and we are acknowledging that we are accountable to them instead of trying to blend the two as if, you know, these things are all going to mesh perfectly. Because we know that there are going to be some there are going to be like little bumps in the road. You know, I think as city councilors, we understand that there are some things that citizens will sometimes ask of us that seem really simple, but they're very complicated because there are contracts that are in place. There's a history. There are, mass general laws. There are, city ordinances. There are different things that prevent us from doing what may seem to be kind of common horse sense. And I think that it would be good to have those two separate forums and then to come together at the end and say, this is how we as a community are all going to move forward. Does that make sense to everybody?
It does. I think I want to, just from a facilitation standpoint, I want to caution about having the big lofty, usually I'm encouraging big lofty goals, but I want to encourage something like the more practical, smaller steps we can make to build on this might be able to provide you with more tangible steps forward. So maybe just starting in a place of using your committee as a point of information from public safety. I know that both Chief Haig and Chief Strahan have wanted a forum to be able to say, you know what, these are the actions we have taken before this all started resurfacing, and this is what we're committed to doing still, versus being talked about and not being invited to the table. I think they're really eager to come to the table and be a part of the discussion, but because this other forum hasn't happened yet, they haven't had that place to do so. So love your ideas, maybe just starting with a point of information, and then seeing what our residents are able to put forward when that does take shape and when that does happen. And then that's when the big lofty ideas can come into play because we've had multiple conversations by then.
Right. So if I met with my committee members and talk to them and we can brainstorm some questions and then have the chiefs come to us in September, that way when they come, I want it to be a good use of their time.
Yeah, I don't think
we already have our.
Sorry, go ahead.
I want to have our questions already prepared, and I don't want to prepare, if I start preparing now and then spring this on my committee, they may or may not have questions at the ready.
Well, that's why I recommend you have, if the meeting's on the 17th, like 2 full weeks. And so use the power of email to maybe, what I did for Ways and Means when I chaired that committee was when the budget books came out, we would, and Vice President Wheeler does a great job of continuing this, is just soliciting questions from your committee via email. Of course, it'll have to go through the clerk's office, but using the power of email or even yeah, probably the power of email, because I don't know if like things like type form are legal in public record. But so just reach out to them, send like draft an email, have the clerk's office send it out and capture questions. And in the meantime, invite the chiefs to your meeting. I think if we wait another month, like if you spend your meeting taking time to get questions, to have a discussion in September, again, we're behind the 8 ball on this.
Okay, that's fair. I'll drop an email tonight after dinner.
Or whenever, yeah. Thank you so much, Councilor Gilmore. I appreciate it. And so it sounds like Tammy, for that agenda, will have that discussion, like race relations discussion. And Sheila, does that mean you would like for Tammy to invite public safety to your meeting on the 17th?
Yeah, it sounds like that might be the best use of our time.
I would recommend inviting Chiefs Strahan and Haig, and then Chair Hawkins from the Public Safety Commission.
That sounds like a good idea.
I think the Public Safety Commission also has action items that they're kind of taking on to address race relations and any concerns around that in the city. And so I think having their presence there might be helpful too.
Yeah, what about the Human Rights Commission? I can't remember who's the chair offhand.
Yeah, it's if you find that, yeah, sure, why not?
All right, sounds good to me.
Thank you very much. Tammy, did you get that?
Yes, for the agenda is going to be the 2020 federal census discussion, and then a discussion on race relations, and invite Chief Strahan, Chief Haig, the chair for the Human Rights Commission, and Chair Hawkins from the Public Safety Committee.
Correct. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Pause. Does that feel good for my committee chairs? Does that feel good for everybody? If there's any lasting questions about agendas, please speak now.
Just a question for Danny, the veteran services lease, would it make sense to put that on the council agenda, knowing that if anyone objected to the 30 days, it could be tabled?
Yes, please. Otis, you're my hero today.
Any other questions about agenda items? Seeing none. City clerk report, background noise during WebEx meetings.
Yes, it's been getting a little worse. That's why I'm bringing it up. As you know, because we are not together in a meeting environment and people are in their homes, there's distractions. I know it's nice out and people want to, take their Chromebook outside, to have their meeting, but unfortunately, if they're on a noisy street and there's cars and motorcycles going by, last month, unfortunately, it was a lot of background noise, children, cars, phones, papers being rustled in front of microphones, and I can't hear. And of course, I have to keep the record, and I have to keep an accurate record, and I can't do that if there's constantly noise. So I don't know. I just want people to be a little conscious of where they are. If they have to be in a room where they can't be disturbed or anything of that nature, if they can at least make the effort to do that, that would be very helpful. I know we can't stop all of the noise. I know that there's going to be some issues, but if everyone can just try to reduce the background noise, then I would be able to hear conversations and be able to keep accurate records.
Right on. I agree wholeheartedly.
Also, I didn't put this on, but just to let you know, September 1st is the primary. That's also the next date for the committee chairs meeting. So of course you will not have a clerk. But I think you guys will be okay. Also, and I hope I'm not overstepping my bounds here, but
No, go right ahead.
I have only been here for a short time. I've only been here for 2 years, but I have listened to a lot of meetings, and I'm trying to find ways to make things smoother. You know, if you noticed on the agenda, there were a lot of outstanding business that hadn't been on for a while. You know, there's stuff that's continually being brought up. What I've been trying to do is I've been trying to work on policies and procedures for when ordinances are submitted, when resolutions are submitted, and everything like that. But of course, with things going on like they are, I haven't really been able to address it. So probably within the next couple of weeks, I am going to be producing policies and procedures. I've sent a couple to President Stemple, and I know with everything going on, that's the last thing. But my goal is just to make everything a little more smoother, a little tighter, a little tightened up, dealing with outstanding business. If you are going to delay conversation on something, maybe give me an exact date, like you want to put it out 2 months or 6 months. That way I'm not constantly putting it on the agenda. But at the same time, it's still in everyone's minds, things like that. So just to give you a heads up, I am in the process of working on that, and hopefully we can come up with stuff that would be beneficial to agendas and meetings and the council.
Great, thank you, Tammy. I know for me, I use the committee chair's agenda as that like catch-all, the basin, so to speak, where if things are punted down the line, we keep it here under president's notes or under the agendas here, so we don't lose track of them and we hold ourselves accountable to what we said we were going to do. But I totally understand where you're coming from. And I was trying to find where I saved the procedures that we finalized. So I'll have to look into those because those are very helpful. And I look forward to partnering with you on the rest. So thank you very much for that. And I appreciate all you do to keep us moving forward and to stay organized.
You're welcome.
So lastly, we have our draft for the meetings and agenda items. I do want to note that it says May 20 of 2018. I would love to go back in time.
My bad.
No, it's okay. I would love to go to 2018 again.
August 19th is the date of the
August 19th, 2020. Are you saying that you want to provide a storm update or that you just have to go? I think she left. Okay. All right. So we have the 180 from Maple Brook. Sounds like we're going to be adding on the veterans lease.
Yes.
We have the mayor's reappointment, and then we have the warrant for the primary. Are we missing anything?
The executive session.
That is on there. I think that is it, unless I'm missing anything.
The way it's on the draft, is that how you want the order to go? or do you want it in a different order?
I think financial items first is always helpful. So we'll do the repurposing of the Maple Brook culvert. And then second item can be the veterans lease.
Okay.
And then that will push down the mayor's reappointment, and then the warrant. And then we'll end with the executive session, and then the meeting can be adjourned.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions?
Motion to adjourn.
Second, Wheeler.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? All right. Thank you, everybody. This meeting is adjourned at 7:45 p.m. This was very productive. I appreciate you, and have a great evening at home.